Okay, letter C, continuing on at the bottom of that page. Investigation. The commission randomly audits licensees for such things as continuing ed. All right, so like things like that. And they can undertake investigation if there is a complaint. Once again, if there's a complaint. Next section, we've already covered. These are the violations of license law that we covered at the very beginning that are a Class A infraction. Yes?
I was just reading number 3 and 4 of the page we just split. You said we had already covered it. On your audio, you were talking about if somebody gets investigated, then we're responsible and get charged for those investigative fees?
You could.
But what if you're found innocent? Are you still responsible for those fees? Or would that
Well, first of all, no one's innocent. You're found not guilty. And there's a difference between those. Sorry.
Okay.
Not guilty just means we couldn't find enough proof to prove what we wanted to prove.
Well, I just saw an investigative fund on there, so that's what
Yes, there is an investigative fund that we all pay into.
Okay.
All right?
So if you're found innocent,
Not guilty.
I'm sorry, not guilty, then do you pay those fees? Or
I don't know. Well, I do know everything, but you don't believe that I know everything.
it says in your book that you should know everything.
I thought I was wrong once, but I was mistaken. And people that really think they know everything are really annoying to those of us who actually do. All right? The reason I don't know your answer is because I've never found anybody that they investigated that they didn't find guilty. All right? I think they're pretty sure by the time they get around to investigating you, there's enough damning evidence that you are probably not guilty. All right? Number 2, we've already gone through the violations, Class A infraction. So we can skip that section again. Go all the way down to the next page, letter D. If you are found not guilty, well, okay, let's take that back. Misspoke. If you are found guilty, here is what they can impose upon you. The commission can revoke your license completely. They must suspend your license. And when they suspend your license, they usually suspend it with a time frame. Suspend it for 6 months, suspend it for 90 days. Okay? They may issue a cease and desist order enforced by a court. This is what I was telling you. The guy in Fort Wayne who was not licensed was accused of brokering without a license. But because he wasn't licensed, he wasn't actually a member of the real estate commission, so they couldn't go after him through that route. So they went another route through the attorney general and the circuit court and hauled him into court for brokering without a license. All right? They can censure your license or a letter of reprimand. Censure is when they yell at you. They bring you in and they go, you stupid, some mother, and they let it go. A letter of reprimand is when they write it down in your permanent record. You guys remember when you were in 3rd grade and your teacher told you, that's going on your permanent record? Well, this is the same record that's been following you around all these years. All right? So it goes in your permanent record. That they can use against you at a later date if they need to. So if they issue a letter of reprimand, it goes in your file. They bring you back in another year and they go, you had this same problem a year ago and we wrote you a letter of reprimand. You elevate into a suspension. So censure is kind of where they just tell you you've been bad. Letter of reprimand is, it's a permanent record that can be used at a future date. They can also place you on a probation. And there are several different types of probation. One is called reporting probation, where you go back to the commission every month at the meeting and tell them what you've been doing. I know guys that were on that. Every month they went in and say, okay, we got 3 listings this month. We had a closing, yada, yada. Here's how we handle it. The committee said, okay, thank you, come back, see you next month. So they had to go in and report what they were doing. They could limit your probation. If you've done something wrong, they can say, hey, don't do any more commercial business until you get some education. So while your license allows you to, you can't. We've limited your scope of practice. They can force you to get more continuation CE. So if you got 12 hours that's due, but you did something that was ethically wrong, they may impose another 4 or 5 hours on top of that 12, specifically in the ethics realm, so that you learn and see your error of your ways. They can also ask you to perform or refrain from certain specific acts. They will also ask you to could pay community restitution. Do so many hours of community service or something. And they may force you to do a rehabilitation. I knew a young lady that got her third DUI in a year, and they put her on probation, and one of her requirements to get her license back was she had to report back with the proof that she went to an alcohol class. All right?
So how did they find out she had 2 DUIs? Do you have to report that?
You have to report that stuff. And if you fail to report, that's a violation too. All right? So she had to go to AA, right? Which is funny because anybody ever, don't raise your hand if you go into Alcoholics Anonymous, I don't really care. But the first thing they always do is like, hi, my name's Raymond. Do they not understand what the word anonymous means? And if you do it while you're driving, which is AAA, right? That'd be 5 A's. So they can force you to do that, and that was part of her job gig. She had to come back with a certificate showing she went to the class. So they can force you to do community service and actually do rehabilitation. They can also give you a civil penalty of up to $1,000. This is not a criminal court. They cannot arrest you. They cannot give you time. It's not a criminal court. They don't have that power. This is a civil, what's the word I'm looking for? Committee. So they can issue civil fines, which don't seem very civil at $1,000, but it's a civil fine of up to $1,000. I love the word it says up to 1,000. You might as well just write 1,000, because every one I've ever seen, it's always been, that's their favorite number. 1,000.
Per violation.
Yeah.
Where would that penalty go into? Would it go into
To the state general fund. Fines and fees go into the general fund. They can also ask you to pay restitution if you've harmed a customer, like stole their earnest money. They could. They are enforceable by civil laws, but I mean, they can't say, Joe, you did this, we're going to send you to 6 months in jail.
But, I mean, as far as 1,000, I say, you know what, keep my license, I ain't paying. Is there, like...
Well, at the risk of saying I don't know, because then I would accuse them of not knowing a second thing today. Can you refuse a civil penalty? I would think not. They would probably then come after you through a court judgment. You would get a lien and placed on your body. So I would think you could not, especially since you are the ones that are a member of the commission, and when you sign on, you agreed to abide by their rules and regulations. So if they sentenced you $1,000, you can't say, keep my license, I'm leaving. They would probably still come after you. Well, actually, now that I think about it, I am right. Because there's a law that says you cannot surrender your license if you're under an investigation. You have to have permission to give your license up, and the committee will never give you that permission, because what they're going to do is sanction you, and then if you want to give it up, so that when you want to get it back, they're going to go, oh, you got this sanction out here waiting for you. You know, we were going to put you on probation for 90 days, but you gave your license up for 2 years. Now you want back in? Great. Your 90 days is still due. So you cannot surrender your license if you're under investigation without their permission. They can Okay, couple other things. One, it's not a criminal court, so they can't sentence you. And you cannot lose your license without a hearing. I don't care what you do in the real world. If you are arrested and convicted for freebasing kittens, it's my favorite joke in the whole book, and very few people let it. Even if you get arrested for freebasing kittens, it doesn't matter. You got to go in front of the commission for them to take your license. Just because you got arrested over here in the court doesn't mean that you're going to lose your license. It has to have a hearing, okay? They have to have a hearing. Now, with that being said, they can't issue what's called a summary suspension, which is the next section. A summary suspension is a suspend your license for 90 days before the action is taken, okay? And to be summarily suspended, it has to be because they think you are a direct threat to the health and safety of the public. I don't know what you can be doing in the real estate world that would be a direct threat to the health, safety, and welfare of the public, but if they believe you are, they can suspend your license until they call you in to find out what's going on. The only thing that I could really possibly think of where they may exercise this is if someone calls up and says, I think Raymond is embezzling the earnest money and is, doing business and driving this new Ferrari and all that kind of stuff. They may suspend my license and send me a letter and say, hey, your license is suspended. You can't do any business as of today. Come in next month to the meeting and let's find out what's going on.
So would that suspension then trickle down to the rest of your brokers?
No, because I'm not the managing broker. The company is. All right? Jen would take over and she would become the new responsible party. All right? So they would suspend my license and I would go in and go, no, my wife hit the lottery and that's where the new Ferrari came. I didn't steal the money. And they're like, oh, okay. So then they would reinstate my license from the suspension. Or they would go, okay, now we've caught you, so we're going to elevate your suspension to something other that we were going to deem necessary, like revocation or something to that effect. It's not that easy. I'm saying that's the only thing I can think of. Just because someone makes a claim doesn't mean they're going to suspend your license.
Would the commission possibly get together via not in person to make a decision? Is that where they
Yes, they have the ability to, remember, make the decision as long as they consent orally that that's what they're going to plead to. So what I was saying, Holly, is this is the only thing that I could think of that would be the closest to violating a health and safety and welfare, is where somebody says, I think he's stealing the money. And let's assume they have notable evidence when they say that. He's got a new house in Nashville, he's driving a Ferrari, which I'm not, but I would, and things like that. Yeah, logically it makes sense. Had two people complain that they didn't get their earnest money back, yada, yada, yada. The state may go, okay, that's enough suspicion for us, not just because somebody's mad and goes, hey, I think Raymond's doing something. Okay, suspend his license. All right? That's not going to happen. I was just trying to make the point. That's the only thing I could think of. Normally, if they think, well, I think Raymond's working unethically, they might call me to the commission, but I don't think that's dangerous enough that they're going to suspend my license before they even talk to me. Okay?
What would happen with the, you mentioned commingling and conversion. What would happen to you if that?
It's a violation. Depend on what it is. I may go in there and plead my case and say, hey, Your Honor, I've been an agent for so many years. We got a new girl who works for us. She went to the bank. She wrote the wrong account number. As soon as we found out they commingled, we pulled the money back out and put in the earnest money. It was my mistake. It was truly a mistake. There was never any issue. I've been here 17 years, never done anything wrong. And they might go, okay, I'll tell you what we're going to do. We're just going to give you 4 more hours of CE this year on earnest money account. Okay, thank you. And a $300 fine. Now, if they say it's your 17th time we've brought you in here, we're going to revoke your license.
Well, because I was thinking that might be something that could happen by mistake very easily.
It can happen by mistake, and there are lots of ways to rectify that problem. One of the best ways is to put your earnest money account in Fifth Third and your general account in Nat City, so that you can never cross-populate banks. So when you go in with your deposit slip, they go, hey, that's not our deposit slip. Ooh, crap. I'm glad that happened because I just saved myself. All right? That's one of the best ways to do it.
But it's these 12 people on the commission that are making these decisions.
Yes.
Or,
Or four. No.
So, but those, okay, sorry.
They actually would, I saw that happen, where there were less than 12 when they were deciding the fate of somebody, and they tabled the discussion until next month because they wanted to give that guy the best answer. So they didn't want 4 or 5 or 6 to make a decision. They tabled it, said, hey, we table this inquiry until next month and make sure we have everybody here for this. Is that okay with you? And the guy's like, of course it is, but once again, no decision is a decision, because during that month he had to wait. Guess what? He also didn't work because his license was suspended until they decided. So to decide whether to keep it in suspension or lift the suspension was the decision. They postponed the decision to next month, which really is a decision. They left him in suspension for another month.
So when your license is suspended,
You
you can't even use
can't do anything because you theoretically don't have a license. When your license is in suspension, can you do a referral was the question? No. All right? A suspended license may be reinstated after a hearing and the board satisfies that the applicant has reasonable skill and safety and competency. That's what I'm saying. They're going to call me in, hear what's going on, and then they will lift the suspension if they find out it was a mistake or they are okay with it. Or they could elevate the suspension to one of the others. A letter of reprimand, censure, revocation, if they find out I actually was doing something. If your license, here's one, number 4. A license who is delinquent on child support may have their license placed in probation and eventually suspended. Guys, this is a state run by females. If your child support's late, they'll take your driver's license and your real estate license. Yeah, I've never understood the theory behind that. You're behind in money, so let's take the job away from you and the way to get to your job. I guess their belief is you will find a way to borrow money. Do what?
I said I would think, though, that they would warn them ahead of time, say, hey, if you don't, pay this.
I think the judge has warned them ahead of time that you're behind in child support.
They know they're supposed to pay, so.
I doubt there's a deadbeat dad that goes, really? You were serious? Excuse me while I pass out.